Revolutions. Revolutions don't always start in a city square, or a beer hall, or boardrooms, or on a battlefield. The real American story is that revolutions take place in garages, or the backs of homes, or businesses. Revolutions take place with friends, or by lone inventors, just like Leroy E. Ed Parsons. In 1949, such a revolution took place. The cable TV revolution, as it be, started in the back of a radio station by a radio station owner and repairman, Ed Parsons. Parsons was a lanky 6-foot-tall white-haired man that grew up in Portland, Oregon, close to where Lewis and Clark first saw the Pacific, and in a place where more ghost towns occupy the landscape than any other state. Once in 6th grade, using spare radio parts that he found in his garage, he created spark coils and went about shocking some of his school peers. Caught in the act, his teacher redirected him with a book on Marconi's wireless system. This intrigued him to further play around with radio and electronics. In his teenage years, he built wireless radio sets to communicate with friends from house to house, and he also built receivers, selling them to a local radio shop for pocket change. After high school, he worked as an engineer for KGW Radio in Portland. And during World War II, he heard news that the local radio station in Astoria, Oregon was failing and up for sale. He jumped at the opportunity and bought the station. He even made it profitable after the first 30 days, as well as opening up a small radio repair shop in the back. He used this shop to repair and sell radios to locals so that they could tune into his broadcasts. 2 birds with 1 stone. An engineer by trade and an inventor by heart, having grown up in one of the greatest technological booms in modern history. In fact, he lived in a time where the culture was invention, for the icons of the day were inventors like Alexander Graham Bell, Edison, Tesla, and Marconi. Specifically, inventors of television, such as Charles Francis Jenkins, John Baird, and Paul Julius Gottlieb Nipkow. Let us now swim back in time, past the revolutionary wave that caught Ed Parsons, to where the first inventions of television came to shore. Paul Nipkow invented the Nipkow disc in 1883. It was an electromechanical picture scanning method that would later be used in the first practical television systems. In 1928, Nipkow states after his first sight of television at a Berlin radio show that hundreds stood and waited patiently. A dark cloth was pushed aside, and I saw before me a flickering image not easy to discern. While the result of an inventor's work may oftentimes come to fruition within their lifetime, that they get to see the extent of the revolution that their inventions caused seems to be quite rare. Television itself was invented in 1924 by John Baird of Scotland. John Baird used a Nipkow disc to scan a scene and generate a radio signal. He then used a similar mechanical device at the receiver to display the picture. Meanwhile, other inventors were also working on various forms of television. In 1925, Charles Francis Jenkins developed and demonstrated a synchronized transmission of images and sound to the public. Patenting this technology, he later set up the Jenkins TV Corporation, the first broadcasting station in the United States. The station was named W3XK, and for the first time it transmitted black and white images 5 nights a week. It seemed like the dreams of science fiction fans from all over the world was on the cusp of reality. A box in your living room that could bring news and entertainment with moving pictures and sound directly to you? Absurd. But it was becoming a reality. Yet broadcasting was still in its infancy. It often cut out during storms. It used expensive technology that couldn't transmit very far, couldn't transmit through hillsides or buildings, and it was not able to reach people in specific areas. And yet people held out to watch for the entertainment of the day. Stations like W2XB and WGY broadcast melodramas like The Queen's Messenger, farm and weather reports, the first commercials for Gillette and other products, and of course vital news to the masses. By the mid to late 1940s, network television and newspaper corporations dominated the market. Huge corporations that would eventually be disrupted by the democratization of broadcast media. Due to the war effort for the Second World War, broadcasting had been limited and utilized largely for the government's purposes. But after World War II, the government lifted restrictions and allowed for far more opportunities for innovation in the broadcast television market. Although television was huge at that time, it was still faced with the technological limitations that kept it from truly being in the home of every American. In 1947, upon visiting a broadcasting convention in Chicago, Illinois, Ed Parsons and his wife, Grace, watched television for the first time. Grace demanded that they have one for their home. Ed thought it was too pricey and argued that there wasn't even any broadcasting in Astoria, Oregon, that the set would just become another piece of furniture around the house, probably a coffee table or a bookcase. But Ed relented in the end, and they ended up purchasing a 9-inch television for around $1,000. Adjusted for inflation today, that same set would cost about $11,230. It's quite an expensive television. The story may have ended there, but in early 1949, Ed became aware that the local radio station KRSC in Seattle, Washington, was announcing plans to start broadcasting television. Ed connected with members of the KRSC station, and that summer he began testing their signal. Parsons was also an amateur pilot, so he drove and flew around with a receiver sitting next to him, testing for a signal. As fate would have it, he found the best signal atop the John Jacob Astor Hotel right across the street from his apartment. With excitement, Parsons went to his shop and built a receiver to recover the signal and an amplifier to amplify it. On Thanksgiving Day in 1949, radio station KRSC became Television Broadcasting Station, KRSC, and Mr. Parsons was the only person in Oregon to receive their broadcast. Shortly thereafter, his apartment was mobbed with crowds of people wishing to see it. His wife's wish may have become a curse after all. So after some deliberation, he struck a deal with the hotel owner to run cable down their elevator shaft and put the television in the hotel's lobby. Parsons and the hotel owner thought it would be good for business. However, the lobby quickly became overcrowded as well, and the hotel owner asked Parsons to remove the television. Next came Cliff Poole, a local music store owner who agreed to buy the television for his store and even paid Parsons to install it. However, just a few days later, the police awoke Parsons by telling him that the crowds outside the music store were becoming too much of a nuisance. The police chief himself suggested that Parsons help wire the TVs up in the bars all around town. It seemed like no time at all before Parsons was wiring up the whole town. The magic of cable television was spreading, but it was getting in the way of people's view. Wires were beginning to take up the skyline, and Parsons was again called upon to devise a solution. Back to his workshop he went, and he invented a short-range wireless system to broadcast locally and a receiver to recover it before it entered the people's homes through the cable. Now, Parsons wasn't a greedy man. He didn't appear to have an ambition to become rich off of his knowledge, for even though entrepreneurs were coming from all over Washington and Oregon to seek his advice, Parsons never charged a monthly fee from his customers. Instead, he only charged according to the equipment and the difficulty of installation. The average price he charged was around $125. Today, that would be about $1,290. Pretty reasonable. In another instance, Aberdeen, Washington, a place that was beyond the range of current technology, availed his services. Parsons designed a first-of-its-kind 220-volt amplification system that used coaxial cable for both power and signal simultaneously. Popular Mechanics recognized this innovation and, in their April 1950 issue, published an article all about Ed Parsons and his invention. Perhaps he saw opportunity elsewhere, or perhaps it was the fame that he was receiving. But in 1953, Ed and his wife Grace were burned out and moved to Alaska. Ed left behind Astoria, Oregon, the first place in the United States to have a cable television system. While other entrepreneurs were struggling to be a part of the cable television revolution, Ed Parsons will become immortalized for just trying to please his wife.